G'day everyone and welcome to episode number 8 of the Australian Rock Show, Ozrock's loudest and proudest music podcast. My name is Dennis Gray from the Rock and Rollin' Gray Brothers. Today is the 27th of February 2015 when this show is being recorded. Today we are talking to frontman of Kings of the Sun and the Rich and Famous, the one and only Jeff Hoad. This interview was recorded on the 17th of February 2015. In the late 1980s, with his long blonde hair and black leather jacket, there was no cooler frontman than Jeff Hoad, the guy all the girls wanted to be with and the guy all their boyfriends wanted to be. Yet Jeff Hoad was no shallow Sunset Strip cardboard cutout. He was the epitome of rock and roll, an amazing songwriter with a knack for writing catchy, melodic and memorable tunes, a killer guitar player and a hell of a singer to boot. In this interview, we talk to Jeff about everything from the early days of Kings of the Sun, touring with Kiss, and much, much more. Let's get in the mood, folks. Here is the amazing Road to Nowhere, which is lifted off my favourite Kings of the Sun album, 1993's Resurrection. Thanks for your time today, Jeff, and welcome to the Australian Rock Show.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. I do want to talk to you about your current activities, including making a recent return to live performance, and I also want to delve a lot into your past. But straight off the bat, I just want to say a big thank you for creating so many enduring Australian rock and roll classics with both Kings of the Sun and also many unknown classics with the Rich and Famous.
Yeah, it's a little known band, but I actually love a lot of the Rich and Famous stuff as much as I love the King stuff. To me, it's just like a natural progression. I really do. Yeah. Some of the Rich and Famous songs are up there with my favourites, of all the stuff that we've done.
Over the past month, you've made a return to the stage with some solo acoustic shows at the Hard Rock Cafe on the Gold Coast under your own name. I see you've got a further show added this weekend. How have those shows gone so far?
Well, it was a hard one because it was like shake off the cobwebs, but not really shake off the cobwebs, but to go and do a live acoustic solo thing. It's been a while since I played like solo. I have done it before, and it is a real challenge to get back in there, and because you're so exposed, I'm not doing it with any loops or drum machines or anyone else. It's just myself, and to get up there and it's just you, guitar, vocals, and I was trying songs. I was doing a few covers and stuff, and then I was under the house, and I'm sort of struggling away, going, I can't get my groove here. And then I started playing a couple of Kings songs and a couple of Rich and Famous songs on acoustic. And I got my groove back, It was like it became easy to me, and it's really interesting to hear some of them played on acoustic, like Tomboy and stuff on acoustic. It's quite interesting.
I wish, a lot of us wish we lived on the Gold Coast. But how have you been penning new material? What are your immediate plans?
Oh, I've never stopped really writing. I've never really stopped writing music. But with solo acoustic stuff, I've also sort of kicked off with the Rich and Famous again, with Dean, the bass player from Rich and Famous, and another drummer called Dean as well. Just two Deans, Dean 2, we call them. And we've done a couple of shows late last year, and I wrote some really killer songs. It just sort of came like a bit of an avalanche after I started getting into a live situation, like not recording situation, an audition situation, and rehearsing. And next thing you know, I had all these songs I just came pouring out. It was great, and we've done a couple of gigs. We've got more coming, which we're going to announce. I'm looking forward to it.
Are you going to travel further afield, or?
I hope we're going to get down south this time, because we never really got down south of Rich and Famous.
Right. Fantastic. So let's go back right to the beginning. And we've got a bit of ground to cover tonight. I won't take up too much of your time. But so you grew up in Sydney or on the Gold Coast?
I was born in Sydney, born in Glebe, of all places.
Okay.
When Glebe was Ultimo Heights, they used to call it, because it was like a lower socio and economic group back then. But now it's like $1 million real estate. Now that it was like right next to the wool factory there we were born, and then we came up to the Gold Coast and we're here for a year or so. Then we moved out to outside like a country town. That's where we sort of started our music. Well, Cliff started drumming out there, and we all started. That's where we sort of got our first taste of loving music. So I was only about 7 or 8, but that's where we sort of started getting into music. Cliff started drumming, and I started listening, and
Did you come from a musical family?
Oh, I wouldn't say musical. I was more of an entertaining family.
Right.
I used to entertain. We used to have a pub out there, and I used to entertain the bar. But we're all a pretty loud bunch, the Hoads.
Okay.
Always have been.
We're moving on a bit, but 1984, yourself and Bob Spencer joined your brother in the Young Lions. Were they a Sydney band?
Well, Cliff went down to Sydney. He was up here. Cliff was playing a few bands up here, and he said he was going to go make the big time hit Sydney, and because there was nothing going on up here, it was just a few like cover bands and stuff he was in, and he took off down there, and he met up with Bob Spencer. I don't know how he actually met Bob, but they really hit it off. They had simultaneous music. They both loved Free, and they both loved, just they had a great rapport with each other. And then they started a band up, and they didn't really have a singer. And then my brother said, my brother can sing, I think.
Okay.
I think he can sing. I hadn't really done anything. I was a late bloomer in terms of picking up the guitar and everything. But he got me down there, and we started rehearsing, and I started writing lyrics, and that was like 81, 82 actually, when I first went down there. And 82 was our first gig in Bundaberg, of all places. We actually drove all the way out from Sydney to play in Bundaberg. And our second gig was with the Angels and NXS and Human League at Festival Hall, my second show. So it was
So were you in any bands before the Young Lions, or were they the first band you had joined?
No, that was the first band. I was in a band called The Blokes for 2 gigs. That was it. So
okay.
Yeah, nothing really before that. I did a couple of sort of get up, play a few songs with Cliff. Did the
Young Lions record anything?
Yeah, we recorded demos. We recorded quite a few demos and passed them around, but nothing really sort of came of it. And then Bob was sort of disgruntled with the band. I don't know what was happening. I started writing a few things, and Cliff and I sort of started writing stuff. And then Bob sort of saw an opportunity to go to the Angels. And when he left, we thought, well, we'll start a new band, and we'll call it Kings of the Sun, because we had a song in the Young Lions called Kings of the Sun. It was like an intro song, and we thought that's a great name for a band. So we started up as the Young Lions as Kings of the Sun when he left, and that was. We did do demos, but nothing that ever got recorded, like put out or anything.
Okay, that's interesting, because a lot of people are under the assumption that the band name came from the film, but in fact it came from a lyric from a Young Lions song, correct?
It did come from the film. Like we saw that movie, but we actually had a song called Kings of the Sun.
Okay.
It was like a intro song. It never had any lyrics, and then when we decided to get rid of the Young Lions, the name Young Lions, which is a great name, but you can't get old with the Young Lions, can you?
Sure.
So then we decided to call the new band Kings of the Sun, and then we went out, found Tommy Poulter, a little great guitar player from Sydney, and we played around Sydney, did the traps up and down the east coast of Australia a million times. And then we started recording some more demos, and then some guy from America came out, David Kirschenbaum, I think he was, and he recorded Bottom of My Heart.
Which goes top 20 nationally. You must have been encouraged or floored by that early success?
It was pretty insane time, because
sure.
It was a strange time, because we were playing live, and we're playing live with the Angels and stuff like that. So Bottom of My Heart really wasn't. It's quite funny, because even when Bottom of My Heart came out, we found it really hard to put it in our set, because our set was much more hard rock, because we were playing with the Angels, and it was just we were morphing into something else than pop song band, and the music at the time was very pop orientated. There was Well and there was all this poppy sort of stuff around, and Bottom of My Heart was our sort of pop song, but it didn't really suit our live show. Our live show was really upvibe and really hard rock. We were opening for the Tats and the Angels and stuff like that. So it didn't really sort of suit the rest of our set. So when the guy came out from America and saw us playing live, he saw us in the sort of more of what was coming through over there. Like coming through as. He saw what was happening in America with Guns N' Roses. That was all coming through. And when he saw us, he thought, that's fitting right into what's happening overseas.
Okay, you're talking about the RCA executive Simon Lowe?
Yeah, Simon Lowe. Simon Lowe was an English guy, actually, but he was with RCA Records
from the States.
New York. And he came out and he saw us and said, I want these guys to come out. I think he was doing he was checking out all the local talent, and Mushroom Records took him around and showed him a few of their bands, and he chose us.
So this is 1987. So you start touring the US?
Well, we went over there, and we were at that point we didn't have a guitar player. It was just Clifford and I and Anthony, and we went over there and we went straight into a recording situation. We went straight into recording our first album. We went from we arrived in LA and got shown around limousines and everything, and taken here, taken everywhere, and went up and down the place. And we went to a place called Longview Farm, and outside of Boston, and did some more demos of all the new songs that we'd written, because we'd written all these new songs that were fitting in with more of what we were doing at the time, and we recorded them for more demos for a potential new album. So that's what we did for most of the first half of the year, I'd say, yeah.
Okay. Who was producing those demos at that time?
Eddie Kramer was the producer.
Right. He was on board then. Okay. So your debut album was released in October of 1988 with two massive singles, which most people will be aware of, Serpentine and Black Leather, both of which get great exposure due to the videos, and the band's roller coaster ride really starts to take off. As you just mentioned, that album was produced by Eddie Kramer. So you've obviously got great memories of working with him and recording that first album?
Absolutely fabulous. He was a fantastic guy. He's actually a South African, but he's more English because he spent most of the time in England working with Hendrix and the Stones, and he worked with even worked with the Beatles, he worked with Zeppelin, he worked with everyone.
Yes.
So we were about to go with another producer, and then Simon Lowe, it's shown him our demo tape, and he absolutely loved it and said, I really want to do this gig, I really want to do this album. So it was like we actually had to stand up another guy and go, well, we're not going with you, we're going to go with Eddie Kramer, and we just hit it off really, really good. And he was so instrumental in that first album to getting our sound and understanding what we're about, because it was all stuff that he knew anyway. It was just he knew how to get a big guitar sound, he knew how to get great drum sounds working with Zeppelin, and he'd worked with Kiss. He produced Kiss's albums, and he even got me Ace Frehley's amps to record with on the first album. Really, I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay. And if you would have seen the amp, you wouldn't believe it was the amp, because the amp was a little tiny old-fashioned Fender thing that it was just a phenomenal amp. But if you're imagining these giant walls, there was walls of Marshalls as well, but this amp was really instrumental in our sound. So he was able to capture, the live Kings of the Sun sound on that first album, wasn't he? Yeah, he really got it, and he really got the feel of the band, and he coached us through everything, and he had a great personality. He was really, really fun. He was always up vibes. I mean, I've since then I've watched stuff on YouTube and stuff of him who's come out and he's redone Hendrix albums and stuff, and he hasn't changed a bit. He doesn't even look any different. He's just absolute gentleman, and I couldn't speak more highly of him. He was fabulous. He really, look, we were like thrown in the deep end to do a whole album. We hadn't even perceived doing a whole record, and he coached us through the whole thing, Well, personally speaking, and I know for a fact that album stayed on our turntable for what seems like forever, and I know the thing backwards. Like I just got great memories of really enjoying that album, that first album. But so you tour the US supporting Satriani, followed by Europe. Yep. We just touched on Ace Frehley from Kiss. So you opened for Kiss, as is well documented on most of the '88 European Crazy Nights tour. So that's the full stadium tours. Yeah, that was incredible. It was an incredible time, really, because we got over there. I mean, Gene Simmons, he's a very funny character. If anyone knows Gene Simmons, it's like it was a funny time for them, because I don't think that they knew what they were going to be doing in the next 10 years, let alone what we were going to be doing. But they took us on board. They'd seen us, and I just have really hysterical memories of Gene Simmons standing on stage during their sound check, singing Black Leather as he's playing the bass. But really, the first time I saw them was at the Monsters of Rock gig, which was the Iron Maiden, Anthrax, and they came on, and they were sort of like the no makeup, and I hadn't really seen them play, and it was just funny to see them. It was almost like they always kind of are, like a bit of a cartoon character thing come to life. You know, it's just
but
like.
Did they look after you pretty well?
Yeah, they were great, and Gene Simmons was absolutely hysterical the whole way through it. Paul Stanley was very supportive. When I was actually in Europe, I hurt my leg really bad, and I jumped off the stage, and we were actually going to leave the tour because I couldn't walk, and I went to this clinic in Norway, and they fixed my leg up. I sort of walked in on crutches, and I walked out because I'd gone to a doctor in Finland, and he said, you got to go home and not stay off your leg for 3 months. And then I went to this other place, the next gig, because we were telling everyone, we were going to have to finish, and Paul Stanley goes, hey man, you just got to I remember I broke my leg, you just got to put some reflectors on your leg. And they were very seasoned professionals, those guys, I tell you.
Yeah. This time period we're talking about, I remember you were getting a lot of publicity in the British press, and my brother and I pinned. I think it was for Metal Hammer or Kerrang or one of those magazines, but they had a Jeff Hoad poster in the magazine, and we pinned it up and said, "That's it. They've made it now. You know, you've made the British rock magazines." And
well, it's funny how you look back at it now, and I think to myself, well. Because every band that Kiss had ever taken to Europe, because they'd taken Bon Jovi there before, and they'd taken other bands, and they all became enormous. But the funny part about that was because we were really well received in Europe, and really well received in England, because we did those gigs, and we did a small like tour up through England with Kiss as well. And when we got back to America, we were like, we've got to get back over there. They're killing it. But our American manager, he was a great manager and everything, but he just said, don't worry about England, don't worry about Europe. It'll all fall when America embraces you. But we were sort of going, well, yes, I feel like you've got to go where they get you. And we have had a great affinity with. It's funny, instrumental in our sound. Eddie Crane was sort of basically English, our first producer, and then. Bill Whitman, who produced Full Frontal Attack, was English, and then Mark Durnley, who came on board at the end of Resurrection, he was English. So it was like they sort of got us, and it was, to me, it was like we should have capitalised on that wealth of people digging it, you know, because they obviously really got into it, you know, and America is such a tough nut to crack, you know. There were so many bands coming up for that Guns N' Roses era that they seemed to get us over there more than they got us in America straight away, you know. It was maybe the numbers weren't there, or that the critics got us better in England. I think I should say. The people
Bailey
who are
brothers,
behind
the Bailey brothers. I was just watching an interview with the Bailey brothers. Do you remember the duo?
Yes.
Yeah, it was good. They got you as well.
Yeah, they got us, you know. And I don't know, maybe because I remember when we first got to England, we couldn't believe we could actually get the humour again, you know, because Americans' humour is not really like Australian humour. Australian humour is like American humour. Like they got our sarcasm and our putting each other down and our, you know, bagging everything, and they got it. Whereas in America, they thought are you guys pissed with each other, you know, like they didn't get that camaraderie, that Australian, which is very English. Yeah, you know.
What was the biggest crowd? Was it 30,000 in Italy?
Yeah, I think that at that Monsters of Rock was unbelievable, and Anthrax, I think, was the band that blew my mind at that gig, because I think they were coming up, they were the new style of metal, and the crowd just went absolutely insane when they were on. They were more so than anything. I mean, Mind Maiden were enormous. They had, you know, Freddie and Eddie, and they had the whole show and everything, and Kiss were big, but Anthrax were like, you could sort of sense it, like there was a band coming through, a sound coming through, like Anthrax, Pantera, and all those bands that came from that, and they were just sending the crowd insane. And we sort of like, we were basically thrust on the giant stage. We'd just come out of clubs and pubs in Australia. Yeah. It was a real eye opener for us. But we at least had our teeth cut with the Angels. We knew about, you know, a big show, big sound, big moves, and all that. So, you know, like so we had some grounding in it.
Well, I guess that's an interesting point, because the live circuit in Australia in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, it's documented that you had to be tough. You had to play very, very well to survive in the not so much the beer barns, but so these bands go over to the States.
That's what I think. I think Australians fail to realise and remember that since rock and roll started, there's really only been English-speaking rock and roll, if you really call it, comes out of America, comes out of England, and Australia didn't realise it was so much a part of the force, There's so many influential bands from Australia all the way through it because, the Scandinavians hadn't got their act together. They're getting their act together now. They're really starting some outrageous bands coming out of there. And where else was that coming from? English-speaking rock. It was only coming from Australia, England, and America, And we sort of thought we were like this little country that wasn't making a mark, but we were making a mark in our own way, We were really... There was some really influential
Jeff, some
stuff.
of us, personally speaking, some of us knew, and I always thought that our bands were just as good, if not better,
I think so too.
anything from overseas. And I'm proud of so many of these bands which have come from Australia. But I actually think just your point before. That's why I think AC/DC, who cut their teeth, playing in the tough live circuit, by the time they got to those early shows in London and the UK, they were road hardened, like the Angels and so many others.
Yeah, if you want punk, we'll give you punk. You're doing your punk thing, but how about this? We're meaner than punk could ever be, We've had glasses thrown at us, they changed their style. Let There Be Rock album was the album that came out when they were in that punk era. I love that album. I just love that.
Phenomenal.
It's a phenomenal record. Less sort of like emphasis on chorus and just pounding rhythm. I just love that record. I love Rose Tattoo's albums. One of my all-time favourite bands too. I used to see them at the Rock. Remember the Rock Club? What's it called? The Rock Gardens in Sydney. I've always idolised that band. Love them. I saw on your blog tonight Mick Cox. What a fastest right hand of anyone on the planet.
Yeah.
Fastest downstroke ever.
Great memories. And funnily enough, I'm scanning up some photographs. There's a book coming out which Lucy DeSoto, Pete Wells' longtime partner, coming out this year, and I'm submitting some photographs. So I just scanned up some photographs from the Tats, which was at a place called Wagga in New South Wales. Their first show back in early 1993, and see, this is a country town in New South Wales, and this was their first show back with Geordie and Coxie and Wells, and it was a Friday night in summer, early 1993. One of my greatest ever shows. They just blew the doors off that place, and it's just great. So but
phenomenal,
Mick Cox,
phenomenal
no doubt.
We could be a phenomenal band, and Rob Rowley was phenomenal with them as well.
Personally, I'd stack easy the first Rose Tattoo album up against any rock album ever released.
I say is the definitive rock and album. I totally agree. That first album is absolutely unbelievable. When we first actually on the album Resurrection, this is a little anecdote, funny thing that I actually played Astra Wally to the producer and sat there and said, "Listen to this," and he was just going.
That's the sound we want.
Blistering out of the speaker. And I said, just listen to that. And I was just sort of showing him stuff that I loved, and that was one of the albums that I just listened to this song. That riff, that sound, it's just like it's bursting.
Sure. You don't have to convert me. Love it. Love that album. Remedy. I've
cried over that album.
Listen,
I have honestly cried over that album. This album on headphones. I was just going, this is just too good.
At the end of 1988, you come back to Australia, and as is well documented, you open up for Guns N' Roses and are booted off the tour after the Sydney show. Now, being there that night, I didn't know what all the fuss was about. Both the Angels and yourselves, in my opinion, showed GNR how it was done, I thought. They'd been on the road for a while. They looked a little bit tired, in my opinion. But I have fond memories of Doc running up and down the aisles of the venue. There was no way they could, or anyone could have followed the Angels that night, in my opinion. But it was an interesting night.
Yeah, the thing about what happened with us and Guns N' Roses, I think it's kind of sad, really, because even though they came from the same place that we came from, because they loved the Rose Tattoo and they loved AC/DC. So that misinterpretation of the answer that my brother gave in that interview with Steve Mascord was he put it up verbatim onto so you could read it on the internet, and but really it's more like a mood that we're in when we're talking about something, which was like what we're talking about now, how we don't give respect to a lot of Australian acts. And it was like my brother was sort of saying, Guns N' Roses and love Rose Tattoo, and they love, and he was basically saying, this is my interpretation, because I was there, it was like he was sort of saying, we don't get behind our bands, yet we love these bands. He wasn't bagging them or saying they're shit or whatever. He was just basically saying, why don't we get behind our bands? Why don't we realise our bands are just as good as this? They'll fill 3 stadiums, and Rose Tattoo are playing down to 4 people and a dog. Why do we do that? And that's what the general tone of that answer was that he gave, but it was kind of lost in translation. And so when Axl got hold of it and he read it, he interpreted how he interprets most things wrongly. And I suppose perhaps could have even ruined a good, because they actually asked for us to be on the show, because Slash spoke to us from Melbourne shows before any of this bullshit had even happened, and he said, we're glad to have you on. We asked for you guys because we've heard your records, heard your album in America, and we loved it. So it's a kind of sort of sad thing that we couldn't have met on the same level,
Sure, because there's a lot of common ground. Definitely.
A lot of common ground, and that's what I mean. I mean, he's still rocking. I'm still rocking. And I know he loves Johnny Winter. I love Johnny Winter. It's like there would have been a lot to discover, but it was sort of lost in that. I think Axl just took it because he needed something to go off about, And that moment was just. Well, the work better was that the Aussie roadies couldn't wait to get us out of the building. They were the ones that was just kicking us out.
Sure. Wow. Well, it was a fun night anyway. I enjoyed it. But, I saw a lot of the band in January 1989 when you did a run of Sydney shows with the Candy Harlots.
Yep, I remember that.
Actually, I had Lino from the Candy Harlots and Melody Black on last night, so it was good having a Remember When with him. But what I didn't get was why people in Australia, what we've just touched on, didn't get behind the band en masse. And I mean, people were happy to support GNR, Poison, Motley, Warrant, whatever. Yet in Kings of the Sun, they had a homegrown act, which was, in my opinion, way better or just as good as those bands. Yep. Surely there was some frustration there for you.
Well, I think the frustration was the fact that we went over to America. When we came back, they were looking at us like, well, what did you go to America for? But we went to America, so you go where the interest is. And we were, we played it up and down the east coast of Australia since 1981. It's the same band, it's the same people. Sure. And it was like, so we got a bit of a bad vibe. Not bad vibe, it wasn't a bad vibe. It's just like, I felt like they felt, whoever it was, audience, I don't know, I think it was audience, because the audience was always great. It was more like a media thing. Oh, you guys have gone over there. You think you're big time now, but we never felt we were big time. We just went with the flow of what happened, Yeah. And the last thing we thought we were was big time. We knew how big time was because we just seen it, We just we dragged our little lamps on stage in front of the giant Iron Maiden show, so it was hardly like we thought we'd made it.
Well, I can see how that would be frustrating, though, definitely. But
a lot of people. If you think about the people came to those shows were into it. But it was just more of a. I think it was more of a flavour that the media or
always looking for. Looking for something to write about, I guess. But the fans who are into it they just stay loyal forever, I think, and they get it.
That's the thing. I mean, look at Rose Tattoo. Rose Tattoo went and did those tours with ZZ Top and then they came back to nothing. They were huge in Europe and Germany, and they just were huge. And they came back, and I remember seeing them at Tardoma. I don't think Australia has got enough population. I think that's what it is. We've got to realise that tall poppy syndrome is something, and our countries embrace music, and we should embrace music and arts like the other countries in the world do. It's part of our culture.
I agree. I I also think, Jeff, that a lot of punters become complacent, and you know, I was somebody I followed the Divinals for years, and saw them so many times.
We opened for them all the time.
You did. And, you know, towards the end, I mean, they played in dives to no one. And I thought, you know, now they're much lauded. But I think, yeah, when she passed away, typically, you know, a lot of people came out with their fond memories. And I thought, you know, where were you in those lean years where exactly you should have been out there?
Yeah.
You know?
I totally agree. It's a weird. I think Australia's a strange place. I think it's just due to lack of population, really, because, you know, a band in America can have one hit and they can tour for the rest of their lives.
That's right. They can live off it. Yeah.
They can go off it for the rest of their lives. Whether it was something in the 60s, some ridiculous, you know, some ditty that they sang in the 60s. I used to remember seeing bands out there and go, what are they doing playing? But I was actually impressed. And it was that's one thing I'll tell you when we first got over there. It was a different feeling about being a musician. When I came from here, where I was feeling like, oh, yeah, you know, music, what's that? Oh, Roger, whatever. And then got to America, I was actually lauded as being, oh my God, you're in a band and you're signed. Oh my God,
some respect.
That's incredible. You know, they're excited for it. You know, they weren't like, oh, brilliant. You know, it's a different vibe.
Do you know what? I want to just touch on the Aerosmith Australian tour, which I saw a couple of shows. I think the Angry Anderson band had the support. He had a great lineup, but personally, I think you know that was time for Kings of the Sun to have the support. And I've read that Steve Tyler used to crank Kings of the Sun in the dressing room before he went on stage. You'd obviously know that. You visited him, didn't you?
I saw that with my own eyes. I couldn't believe it.
Okay.
He came backstage after. We were taken backstage after their Sydney show, and he came into his dressing room and went, "Hey, now I love you guys. I love your album." And he said, "Come and check this out." And he put a cassette player on. He played. He said, "I've listened to this before I went on." He had Drop the Gun on, and he loved Drop the Gun, and he loved Full Frontal Attack and Crazy. And that Tom Hamilton was a real. He sang our praises everywhere he went, and
right.
But I think the time we would have been a great time for us to do it, but we were actually in between the Resurrection, I think, album. We were sort of trying to get that happening. But another bizarre story I'll tell you on the same note was when Metallica came out here and had that arena tour where they had that section down the front. I ran into Lars Ulrich at the Mansell Room, and he said, "You're the guys in Kings of the Sun. We wanted you guys to open up for us, and they told us that you guys had broken up." And I went, "What?"
Wow.
And I went, I said, "Well, where does that come from?" You know, so I just went, "Who told you we were broken up?" We just came back from, you know, we had brought an American bass player out here, and we were ready to play, and we could have done that tour.
He gave
us tickets to the show, and you know, and I was down in that pit, what do they call it, the front pit, and Hamlet went out on that black letter and pointed at me. I went, Jesus Christ, they really do like the band. And it's like, why aren't we on this show? Some idiots told them we went, "Nah, don't worry about those guys, they're fucked." You know, typical Aussie fashions.
So the first single from the album, Full Frontal Attack, Drop the Gun, reached number 30 on the Billboard charts in the US. But there's many killer tunes on that album, from Lock Me Up, Crazy, Hooked on It, Rescue Me. What we're going to do now, Jeff, we're going to take a bit of a break, and we're going to listen to the blistering first single, Drop the Gun.
Brilliant.
Kings of the Sun there with Drop the Gun. So, Jeff, despite having a super strong album, your label RCA was overtaken by BMG, and as such, the album didn't get as much push as it deserved. Must have been frustrating again. Oh,
it was very frustrating. At the time, you know, we felt we had a really great album. Bill Whitman produced it. He's a phenomenal producer. It sounds ridiculous, but he'd done Cyndi Lauper, but he'd done so many other bands, some big rock bands, and he loved The Who, and he loved all the stuff we loved, and he had that real wild quality. He wanted the album to be as wild as we could possibly make it, which it sounds. That's that really wild sounding album. And he was out here just recently, probably a couple of years back now, I think, with Cyndi Lauper, and I saw him. I said, "What happened, Bill?" And he said he had this is a quote, he said, "Too many forces working in polar opposite directions." He said that album should have been a smash.
It's a common story, isn't it?
You know? He said, "There's just too many things going." He said, "You had some guy wanting to do this with you, and some guy wanting to do that with you, and some guy wanting to do the other, and then some guy wanting to can it." And you know, the strange part about it is you put a single out in America, and if the single doesn't bite, they say, oh, that's it for the album, we'll wait for the next one, you know?
God. Well, Full Frontal Attack was also, I believe, the last album to be released on vinyl by RCA, and which I only just learnt that.
Yeah, that's hysterical, isn't it?
It is, but you may as well finish with something classy, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I've also found the other day the first Kings of the Sun album was underneath a house here, and they had the old the CD packaging. Do you remember seeing that? They had a big, large box to fit in the same racks as albums. They used to make this cardboard box, and I found some original old first albums because the CD wasn't as big then. I was still doing the albums, and then the Full Frontal Attack album had the small CD, and then the album's sales were just dying at that point. But it was the last one, yeah.
Probably a good time to point out that if kids are listening to this and you want to go on, if you do nothing else when you're listening to this, go and hunt down Full Frontal Attack by Kings of the Sun, because I'm giving you the tip. It's a fantastic rock album, top to bottom. But so you go back to the US and you support Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden.
Yep.
1991. Okay, so you're back in Australia. That's having a look. Yeah, I saw you with the Screaming Jets, a couple of those shows, and you know, looking back, great days. Those two bands are on fire.
That's right. That was a great time actually, because we just done that big tour out of there, and we came back and we felt like we were on fire. We did a few runs up and down the east coast of Australia, which is something that I always go, well, isn't there more shows in between? Why do you have to drive so far?
Yeah,
you know. But they were great shows. They really were. And Screaming Jets opening for us, which was great.
Phenomenal band. We had Paul Wassine on the show a few weeks ago, and you know, great band. But 1993, you return to Los Angeles and you record the Resurrection album, which, in my opinion, it's the best Kings of the Sun album, top to bottom, and the most consistent. And if I have to introduce someone to what makes Kings of the Sun great, I pull out this album. Road to Nowhere, Flaunt It, Trapped Inside Your Heart. But, you know, as time has shown, it died a pretty quick death, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, what happened was we were co-signed to Mushroom and then signed to RCA Records and then BMG, and then RCA dropped us because music was changing and there was a lot of the grunge thing was happening. And it wasn't just the grunge thing was happening. I mean, Leader 4 got dropped and a lot of big acts, rock acts got dropped, and everyone was trying to find the next Nirvana. And the record company was going through a lot of changes, and they sort of was just skimming off the fat, I think, and getting rid of it. And we got dumped, and my brother and I just laughed at that point. Went, oh my God, because we sort of, Jesus, what are we going to do now? And then Gary Ashley from Mushroom said, well, if you finish this Resurrection album, you can come out to Australia and do a tour. And so, but we were like that was a very weird time for the band in terms of in the band, what we were going to do money-wise, all that sort of stuff. And that's when Glenn and Anthony sort of split, and you have to ask them why. We finished the record in the States and then came out here and did a tour with Barnsey.
That's right.
And I think Mushroom sort of basically did a sort of flurry little sort of, I think I only got pressed about something like 1,000 copies or something like that. It was ridiculous. But it was a great album. But it's strange. We're under the microscope, you know, by the record company. You guys should write some meaningful lyrics like Eddie Vedder. And I said, I thought rock and roll was about fun, like Chuck Berry and Little Richard and Elvis. I thought it was, you know, supposed to be
Who said that to you? Who said that to you, Jeff?
I said that to them. You know, so I thought, well, that's what I think rock and roll is. I think rock and roll is entertainment. It's fun, you know. If you think about the first rock acts, Bo Diddley.
Oh, absolutely. Little Richard, you know, you can't go wrong. But apparently, apparently, see, that was the problem. And I was only discussing this last night with Lino D, that locally, all eyes shifted from what was happening locally to Seattle. Yeah. And it wasn't just here, it was so many parts of the world. Yeah. And a lot of us who just dug straight ahead rock and roll, I wasn't interested in that dross. And eventually it came round, but obviously the impact had gone. Yeah. But, you know, as I've always said, good music always finds its audience. And
well, it was a thing to play rock and roll, I think, for a certain phase of the 90s. It was literally it just wasn't the flavour, was it? And there was, there was that ecstasy clubs and rave clubs, and everyone was getting into that, and they were getting into, it was a strange time for music. I sort of like the 90s. I sort of look at it as like what happened, and then the 2000s came, and then it's come back, and it's like everything's been taken as it is, as face value now, and you can go on the internet, you can find the music you want, and whereas then it was like it was just lost. Not my favourite time of music. There was people like Zakk Wylde going out there and going, fucking rock and roll, I'm going to fucking rock, but you don't like it or not, and I love that guy for that. He just kept going, mate,
Yeah, importantly, bands like the Stones and especially AC/DC soldiered through and still maintained their popularity, which speaks volumes about, quality of songs and perseverance. Icons.
It's a lot harder to do it when you haven't had the hits, the backlog, backlog of that continues, because Rolling Stones, this is what I've analysed. I love that band so much. I've analysed their career so much, and I think that they were brought up in an era where if they realised if you didn't have a song on the charts or as a single, so a singles band, like all bands were back then, that had something in the charts, because that enables you to tour, and then you go on the tour, and then you get your promoting record, which is on the radio, and that's how the whole thing works, and that's their whole mindset is that. And all those underground bands like Metallica hadn't come through yet. When you think about Metallica came through from that, they were shocked when they got a Grammy, because they got a Grammy without any airplay.
Sure.
It's a lot easier to do when you've got a back catalogue, to remain constant.
What's your take on the music industry nowadays?
I really would have to say I have no idea. I'm lost on it. I have got no idea. I love the fact that you can go out and find whatever you want by listening to, independent radio stations, get on YouTube, find music. I think record companies they're just repackaging a product. They're finding a way to repackage a product. That's what they do.
Okay, so back to 1993, you had Phil Soussan from Aussie's band Leader Ford and Beggars and Thieves play bass on that album. How did that come about? How did he come in?
Well, Anthony was gone, and we were in the recording studio, and we were looking for a bass player, and then producer guy. He said, I'll get a bass player. I got this bass player. And he suggested this one guy, and he suggested a guy called Bob Glob, who was I don't know who he was. I said, I can't handle that name. I don't care how good he is on bass. He was a session guy, and he wanted to have a session bass player. And I said, I want to have a rock guy. And we were down at the studio called Mate's Rehearsal Studio, of all names, because it's funny. And Guns N' Roses used to rehearse there, and we saw them there. And we're talking to this guy called Bobby, who ran the place. He was a lovely guy. And he suggested, I think it was him who suggested Phil Soussan. He said, there's a guy called Phil. He's done a lot of stuff, and he's a great guy. And we met him, and we hit it off, and he did the album. And he did everything first thing about rock and roll and fuzz. I think with two other songs we did with another bass player, Brad Spur, who came out with us. And we did those last two tracks, which is the finishing of the album, for Mushroom, 2 more tracks with Mark Zerman from AC/DC, who did and engineered AC/DC and those about Rock. And so, it was just from word of mouth.
Okay. And I've read that during the recording of the Resurrection album that Motley Crue invited you to audition as a replacement for Vince Neil. True, not true?
Yeah, it's true. It is true. It was just like one of those things where you hear about, there's the crew are rehearsing, auditioning people, and then someone mentioned that, would you like to go in there and do an audition? I was so engrossed in my own world, because our band was in a turmoil at that point. I couldn't have done it. But, I still, to this day, probably can't imagine anyone else but Vince Neil singing for them anyway.
Sure.
But another interesting thing about that, Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols asked me to record an album around the same time. He just got a deal to do another album, and I'd seen him out and spoken to him. He actually came up to me one time outside the Rainbow and said, "You're in that band, I've got that song Serpentine, aren't you?" I went, "Yeah, I like that song, eh?" And then I stayed in contact with. I'd see him out all the time. And he asked me to do the album, but I was just too busy with what I was doing.
At that time, did he have that band gigging with McKagan from Guns N' Roses? He had a bit of a super group. One of the guys from Duran Duran.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, so around about that time period. So Let's move on a little bit. Jeff, 1997 is a three-piece. The band record what would be the last Kings of the Sun album, Daddy Was a Hobo Man, which didn't see the light of day until 2011. Last big gigs for the band in Australia from memory, May 1998, supporting Sammy Hagar. Then reforming in 2001 to support Kiss at Carrara Stadium on the Gold Coast. Must have been incredible to play a big gig like that in front of your hometown, in front of family and friends.
It was a phenomenal day. It was a great day, and it was very funny to see. We saw Gene Simmons there after seeing. The funny part about Gene Simmons is he keeps like a recurring nightmare in my life from that Kiss tour, and then when we were recording Full Frontal Attack, he was recording Kiss stuff in the studio at the same time. So I just keep seeing him through phases of my life, and he was born on the same day as me, so it's like a worst nightmare. But, Daddy Was a Hobo Man was never really. It's contrary to what's been written. It was never an album. It was a series of demos that we recorded. We just recorded them live. So it was, I don't know where. I think Cliff said it was an album. I don't know why he said that. You should just tell the truth and say what it was, which was a demo. You know. So it was never really penned to be a Kings of the Sun album at all. So
okay.
It was just a demo tape from new songs. That's all it was.
So in 2001, you and Cliff put together a new band called The Rich and Famous. Why not continue on under the Kings of the Sun moniker?
Well, as I was saying before, that time frame of music in the 90s, we felt like we were flogging the dead scenics.
Sure.
And, we went to Melbourne and Sydney with Sammy Hagar. We had new songs and new members, and we were sounding really strong, and we didn't get anything. I didn't think we even got a write-up. We got nothing from, we didn't get a bite of that you guys are sounding great, or come back down for another tour. So we just felt very disillusioned, and we thought maybe we could start fresh and morph ourselves into something, because of that Australian attitude of they're over, don't worry about them. So we thought maybe we could find ourselves a new audience, and because we felt everyone who liked rock was dead. It seemed that way.
So, I agree with you. Yeah,
that's what it felt like. It's like Australia got a small town mentality. It's like they're over. Don't worry about them. And even though there's bands that just keep coming back, even Barnsley, not again. But it's like that's like every other place in the world embraces it. Like you never hear someone saying, "Oh, you hear Bazza? He's not still concreting, is he? I bet he's shit at it by now."
I agree with you.
You get worse at it. You're supposed to get better at it.
As I mentioned, bands like the Divinals, there's a lot I could name, just so underappreciated until they're no longer around and they're not coming back, and then everyone heaps the praise on them. And I think, well, why not do it and show your support when the bands are active? But
yeah, exactly right. And it's really nice to see some people coming out, like we're doing these solo acoustic shows. People come down from Brisbane and Ipswich, and they've got all the albums, and they want me to sign them. And I was really flattered by the whole thing.
Wow.
The fact that there's people out there that love it. I turned around one stage when I started up one of the songs, and I went, "There's a guy singing one of my songs." And I was like, and he brought his family down, and another guy brought his family down, and it was like. And he's bringing his kids down to meet you, and it's like and he's showing the kids know the music, and it's like, so you've got this. There is a pulse of real fans there somewhere that does love.
Well, you know what? I mean, people appreciate it, and it's lovely that people do appreciate it, and there should be more people who show their support like that. But so the first Rich and Famous album was certainly a departure from the Kings of the Sun sound, which showed much diversity in the songs, even some jazz influences and sax. Yep. Yet the Stand Back and Be Amazed album, it smokes. And along with Resurrection, in my opinion, the album has hit after hit on it. Worth It, All That Glitters, Power of This, Wiggle. What a tune. Stand Back, what a tune.
Yeah.
Should have been a hit. And
thanks. Very refreshing to hear that, mate, from a music lover who knows their stuff. And you obviously sound like you're one of the people who does love it, and it is a pleasure to hear that, it really is, because you brought up one of those tracks, some of those songs I've created on those albums, Cliff and I created, I'm most proud of. I love that song, Stand Back, Prepare to Be Amazed. I think it's a classic, And the Resurrection album, that actually got voted worst album of the year by Tracks magazine. I mean, of all the records in the whole entire world, why would you vote that album the worst album of the year?
I have nothing to add to that. I just
I mean, obviously, like, I think it was the time Milli Vanilli were out at that point. I mean, it's like, and they chose us.
The less said about that, the better. But mate, let's take a listen to Stand Back. This ain't a movie. This is your wildlife.
Thank you, mate.
That was Stand Back by Rich and Famous. And Jeff, although you are best known for being a frontman, you don't often get the accolades for your guitar playing prowess. And people forget that you played all the guitar parts on most of the albums. You use a lot of wah-wah in your playing, and I know that I've seen on your Facebook page you dig. You put a lot of Flying V pictures, and you dig Zakk Wylde and Randy Rhoads. So who influenced your playing besides Hendrix?
Oh, I have to say my favourite guitar player is Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. I just love him because he's just so different. He's a real innovator of guitar, and he's been around since Hendrix. People don't realise, Hendrix got lauded him as the next big thing, and he's always changing. People just see him as a Texas boogie band, playing Lagrange. But if you actually go back and listen to the records, that guy is a monster of guitar, and he's people like Jack White coming out, and he's playing with the guy from Queens of the Stone Age, and everyone's going, this guy's on the more diverse albums. He's so influential. I love Johnny Winter when I was growing up, and I love Hendrix, of course. I love John Fogerty, and I'd have to say the Young Brothers, massive influence. Rose Tattoo, massive influence. Angels, massive influence. I don't even know about the wah-wahs. I never really thought about myself as being a wah player, but I suppose I do play a bit. And my good wah got stolen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they stolen all my pedals got stolen during Resurrection.
Sorry to hear that. That was in the States?
Beg your pardon?
That got stolen in the States?
We pulled up at our recording studio, and I was loading stuff out of the car, and I turned around and came back out to the car park, which was like, and that was just gone. Everything was gone. Nice.
So around 2009, Rich and Famous call it quits. You focus on other parts of your life. You become a father, and music takes a little bit of a back seat for a while. But you definitely didn't retire from the music biz, as I've read on the internet. Just still writing material at that stage?
Yeah, always writing material. I've got a massive log of stuff I always write. I can sit there in my brain, something will come in my brain. No, I just put it down. But I think we call it quits. Well, Rich and Famous, I'm going with Rich and Famous now. I'm still continuing it, so it's never really over. But I just got sick of the continual slog with, nothing's coming from it. Like just loading into gigs and then getting paid nothing, and then loading out and then nothing coming from it. And it just got to the point where it changed so much, and then there was no more rock gigs. There's no more gigs up here. There's no more. It's just gone now. It's just turned into festivals. And it's just festivals, just everyone walking around looking at bands like Goldfish and more about the event than it is the band. I just got disillusioned, I suppose. But I also had kids and started ticking off a few bucket list things, like things that I had to do.
Okay, so Jeff, current plans, a solo album. You got more gigs in line for 2015?
Yep, we've got some gigs coming up, and I've got a lot of songs. As I said, they come thick and fast. We've got some great new songs: GT Fire, Blast Off, Destiny, Chance, Dirty Music. I just picked the guitar up with the guys, and I just started writing songs, and it looked that great. And I'm sort of not into going out as the past. I sort of feel like I want to just stay current, and just keep moving ahead. And that's why I just feel like I'm going to take off now from where I left off, but move forward,
Sure. So, Jeff, if people want to check out all your current activities, is best place the Facebook page? Yeah,
I'd say so. That's the place to go to.
Okay, good. Just finally, I wanted to ask you about your love of cars. Both yourself and your brother have a love of cars. Have you always been a big fan of American muscle cars? Always,
mate. Ever since I had my first Hot Wheels in '68. Loved them, and I've got a '68 440 Dodge Charger black RT original car. Bought it off a crazy guy in America, like a sort of bikey guy called Coyote, and he was, every time I'm ringing up to buy it, he was, I want to sell the car, and I kept just persevering, and I ended up bringing it back here. It's just the most beautiful thing. And I've actually got a car on eBay. I'm selling it. It's a two-door Ford Futura.
I saw that.
Yeah.
So if any fans are listening, why don't you own a genuine Australian rock collectible? Put in a
real
bid.
one,
yeah, he'll sign the dash for you.
I'll sign the. I'll scratch it in the side like Rita Ford did to Randy Rhoads or someone.
Yeah,
Scratch the name of it into his guitar.
That's right. I've read that, mate. That about wraps it up. In my opinion, Kings of the Sun should have had way more success than you did, and are way underappreciated in this country. And for anyone who has ever seen you live will attest, you are one of the best frontmen this country has ever produced. Is there a song you would like to? You're very welcome. Is there a song you would like to choose to go out with?
Well, I'll choose the Kings of the Sun song. First thing about rock and roll I remember, because I think that's about where everyone has that moment when they see a live band, and it's just it's great and it's overwhelming, and it makes you feel like shit. I don't want this to stop.
For Jeff Hoad there, lifted from 1993's Resurrection album. That is, of course, Kings of the Sun with First Thing About Rock and Roll I Remember. You know, when we decided to do this podcast, Jeff was one of the first guys we thought about getting on board, and I hope everyone enjoyed listening to that interview as much as I did recording it.